Ahoy! Deadlock is an upcoming hero shooter MOBA that is extremely addictive. It comes with a high barrier of entry, but once you overcome this, it becomes extremely satisfying, and once you're hooked, it's very hard to get away from. When I initially tested the game, it didn't grasp me immediately, but once I tried it again and figured out some more things, I was locked in. I've been pretty much grinding it non-stop since, and I want to share my experience with you. Deadlock is being developed by Valve, who have a great track record for their games overall, and it's rumored that IceFrog is working on it, who was working on the original Dota mod as well as Dota 2. So Deadlock is a hero shooter MOBA, but there's a heavy emphasis on the shooter part here. You play behind cover a lot, you crouch, aiming is very important, headshots as well, but don't worry, there are also characters for people who suck at shooters like me. When it comes to new games, people generally want to have something they can relate to, so they want to know what game this game is like, which is very difficult to say with Deadlock because in my opinion it's really like nothing else. It mixes a lot of different elements from games that you know. It has aspects of Paragon, for example, Dota, any hero shooter you can think of, be it Overwatch or Paladins or anything else, but ultimately the way it's packaged together is something that we haven't seen yet. If I had to say which game came closest to it, it would actually be Crucible, which barely any of you will even remember. And still, they're very different games. You have a very traditional laning phase like you do in MOBAs in Deadlock, which most other games that have experimented with things like that haven't really done, while simultaneously having this very strong emphasis on gunplay. You have extremely high mobility, so lots of things happening here at once, and the complexity is insane, as you will be able to tell in a few minutes. Now, when it comes to the graphics and the visual design, I know it doesn't look that fantastic, or at least that's my opinion. I think the game feels much better than it looks, and I'm hoping that throughout the development stages they may be improving that a little bit as well. It is worth noting that Deadlock was previously known as Neon Prime and had completely different visual design, so I think they may still be in the process of changing things over a little. As you can tell at this point, Deadlock is not fully released yet. You can get invited by other players who have the game. They can invite anyone on their Steam friend list, but it's not fully launched. A lot of people are helping others come in through Discord or Reddit though. Despite the game not being fully released, you can see that it's already showing quite significantly in the Steam charts, sitting at 30,000 concurrent peak on most days and then 40,000 on the weekend. And this is after the floodgates have just been opened for these basically pyramid scheme level invites, where in the future we may be seeing a significantly higher number. So how does Deadlock actually feel? First of all, it is extremely fast. There's a heavy gank and rotation emphasis. You can do very early tower dives, so not exactly what you would expect from a traditional MOBA where you can play relatively safely under your tower for a long time, and rotations are usually just expected from the jungler early on. All characters have extremely high mobility compared to other games, with usually having at least 3 dashes available. You can also do dash jumps for further distance or dash slides, and this is tech that is very commonly used on even the medium level of play. Beyond that, you can get various items to further increase your mobility. The character design is what resembles hero shooters the most by far. In all honesty, quite a few of the characters are fairly generic. For example, if you're a Blitzcrank or Roadhog or Sylvanus player in other games, you will enjoy Bebop with his grappling hook. You have a character that's a sniper, an assassin, a melee tank, a bow sniper, and a lot of the abilities will look very familiar, especially from Overwatch. However, there are also more unique characters. Lash, for example, is an extremely high mobility character who grapples into the air by latching onto targets and can slam down, but also can pull most of the team in if he lands a good ult, which it's somewhat similar to the Overwatch hamster ball, but really not quite the same. Viscous is a character that is just a green blob that has all kinds of blob abilities, can turn into a ball, which I guess is similar to hamster, but on the other hand also has some significantly different abilities where he can turn himself into a cube or punch from the ground with a massive goo fist. Paradox is all about slowing time and can swap positions with an enemy, but also has a kit along with that has various other tools that slow time in some way on herself or others. And Ivy, besides being an absolute menace, is a gargoyle that can turn herself into stone, but in her ult she can pick up allies and then fly around with them and drop them off in the enemies, which can be devastating if your ally has a strong ultimate that can hit many people at once, for example. Deadlock has a fairly long time to kill at most stages of the game, unless somebody gets extremely fed. Overall, Deadlock's learning curve is absolutely brutal. I can help you with that though, a lot of guides coming soon, so consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you haven't yet. You'll quickly find that pretty much everyone sucks at Deadlock first. For me, it went so far that after 2 days of intensely grinding, I almost quit because I figured I'm not gonna be able to learn this game sufficiently to keep up. But I'm glad I stuck through it because eventually I started picking up on things and figuring out ways in which I could deal with what was thrown at me despite not being the best at clicking on heads. And watching various shooter and MOBA pros from other games play today while they were all streaming, I was kind of affirmed in my choice here because I found that most of them also sucked initially. Of course, being a pro at a shooter or MOBA is an advantage, but ultimately everyone still sucks in the beginning. And I've witnessed this over and over again, having played with some high-level players in other games and MOBAs as well as shooters, and many of them felt that this initial experience was a massive hump for them. But most of them also felt that this was a great challenge to overcome, to try and figure out the game, to learn it, and to get better. And realistically, even if you're 50 hours in and you've mainly just played, you will probably still suck. Guides can help you a little bit, again, subscribe if you want to see those, but at the end of the day, there is so much to learn in this game that it's probably going to take hundreds or thousands of hours to actually get very good. Part of this is due to the rapid laning phase. The laning phase is relatively short, with it generally being dissolved, quote unquote, after 10 minutes, and in this time you can get a very significant lead. There's a high emphasis on farm, but also extremely long-range poke. If you can see an enemy, they can probably hit you in some way, meaning that you are never safe while farming. There's this constant threat, there's constant action happening, something might be jumping you at any given moment, especially because the transition between lanes is so short. You can just come over to another lane in a couple of seconds and just gank there and go back. There is no jungler, but there could still always be a rotation. There are 4 lanes, so if you're in one of the 2 middle lanes, you could always get rotated on from either side as well. And the farm isn't just found in the waves, I will detail that further in a beginner guide soon, but in various objectives across the map, as well as you later being able to solo jungle camps with most characters. Your early game build is also extremely important. There are items that allow for faster clear, give you self-heals, or higher mobility that can influence how your lane is going to feel early on. Speaking of items, there are a ton of these, separated in 3 categories. We have the yellow gun damage type, we have the green, which is usually health-focused items, and then we have the purple, which is the mystic stuff, so the magical damage, quote-unquote. You get 4 slots of each, so you're typically running at least 12 different items, and on top of that, there are 4 extra slots you can unlock by achieving certain objectives in the game, which results in having a total of 16 different items. And these items are extremely impactful. Of course, they are the ones that give you more damage, cooldown reduction, some shield, some survivability, all that kind of general stuff that you would expect. But along with that, there are also actives. There is an item that can stun enemies, there's a self-heal, a silence, an AoE slow with damage, a 3.5 seconds damage immunity, and stealth item, something that allows you to heal and pull allies towards you, and another one that allows you to completely reset the cooldown of your ultimate, so you can just use your ultimate twice, or one that, with a much shorter cooldown, allows you to reset the cooldown on one of your abilities, so you can use that twice. Depending on which character you're playing, there are some absolutely insane combos that are possible with this. And new things are getting discovered here constantly, so there's an insane amount of experimentation. That said, as a beginner you have the option to just copy someone else's build, which will make your early experience a lot easier. As you can tell from all these items, Deadlock requires you to use an absolutely crazy amount of keys. You have your 4 active items that you can use at the same time, you have your 4 abilities, you have your melee and counterattack, which we're not even going to go into, you have your scope, you have your normal shot, you have your cancel button, you have your slide, you have your crouch, you have your jump. It is ridiculous, and I'm still struggling to fit them in the keyboard on a good way because it's just so many things at once. Most new players end up not picking any active items early on for this reason alone, because they're still overwhelmed by all of the other keys they need to keep track of. And to top it all off, the map is extremely complex with so many layers to learn. There's an entire underground level to it, and then there's also a higher level to some degree where aerial characters will often be, but there's also various rooftops that you can stand on and so on. So you can go into a lot of places, get a lot of advantage through that. I didn't even know until many games in that there was, for example, a teleporter to the other side of the map essentially. So lots of crazy things that you'll figure out eventually. While the steep learning curve can be a fun challenge, pretty much like climbing a mountain, it is also a risky move because, of course, you are alienating certain players that are not interested in going through that grind and learning the game slowly, whereas something like Overwatch is somewhat more digestible in comparison where you don't need to learn all that much at once. But fortunately, Valve is behind this game, meaning they have as many resources as they want to and they can very easily promote the game if they want to through Steam. And they are able to keep a game like this afloat until it's found the people that they are meaning to reach. After all, Dota 2 is also an extremely complex game, but hugely successful. I have really been enjoying Deadlock so far. I just hope they add more melee characters in the future. If you want to hear more about it, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. In the next days we talk about beginner characters, general beginner tips, key bindings, secret characters, items and so on. I might also stream on Twitch again soon, so consider following me there on twitch.tv/DukeSloth. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.